What's up, cycling fans? Welcome back to another episode of Pack Chatter. I apologize in advance for my cold. It'll only last here for the intro because it hadn't hit me yet for the episode. So if I sound a little off, bear with me for a minute, and once the show starts, you don't have to hear it anymore. So we got a great episode today. Really cool guest. Before we start, though, we'll hit up our sponsors. First, we're sponsored by Legacy Bikes. That's Legacy with an I, Legaci, bikes.com. It's where you can get all your needs for kids' balance bikes. They have been doing bikes for over 30 years, and they can get your kids set up on the coolest balance bikes known to man. So check them out. Get your kid up and going. Spring is coming, and your little one's going to want to be ripping around on a Legacy balance bike. We're also brought to you by the New York State Bicycle Racing Association, or NYSBRA. NYSBRA is the organization that brings us all the racing in New York State. They do permits, they do grants, they do state championships, upgrades. They're responsible for all the really difficult stuff that nobody really wants to do, but these people pick it up, they get it done, they love it, and they do it for the good of the sport, and they do it so that we can have races. So show them some love. Go to their website at nizbra.com. Follow them on Facebook. You can see calendars. You can see places where you can get some grant money for your races or your clinics. So check them out and support the good folks at nizbra.com. We're also brought to you by the Dirty Bikes Gravel Series. Dirty Bikes with a U. Registration is open on Bike Reg. 3 unbelievable gravel races. The coolest gravel series in the country. No doubt. We got prizes, we got amazing courses, we got pros, we got parties, we got bands, we got jerseys, we got socks, we got trophies. There's so much cool stuff going on. You're not going to want to miss it. If you follow my Instagram, you can check out the jerseys that'll be available for sale next week for some pre-order, and it will go to the winners as well, but you can order one ahead of time if you want to make sure you get one. You can check out the socks that if you register before February 15th, you'll get a free pair of socks at Austin and a free pair of socks at Prattsburg. And you can still get into an early registration window here if you register soon. So get signed up for the Dirty Bikes Gravel Series. It is going to be the best spring classic racing in the country. 3 weeks, 3 amazing courses. Be there. You don't want to miss it. All right, let's get into our guest. Our guest today is a domestic cycling legend. He embodies the hard-nosed American blue-collar racer. Cycling Tips called him a lifer, which I think is just apt and such a cool title and something we should all sort of aspire to. He's truly a leader in the sport. He's been a leader in whether you're talking about cyclocross or racing on the road. He raced pro till he was 40. He's still racing 1-2 races now. The guy's just a hard-nosed coach, rider, legend, and we got a chance to sit down with him for a few minutes and just talk about racing and talk about some different events, some different experiences, and how he got into the sport, as well as his passion for coaching and clinics and helping other people get into the sport. So it was an honor to meet him and talk to him. I hope you enjoy the show. Here is Bill Elliston of Elliston Coaching.
You'll never go out on a training ride and dig that deep.
Awesome. We won gold.
They're life rides.
I'm like, dude, I'm still figuring this out.
Lose sight of the fact that it's whoever goes faster.
This isn't a road race. This isn't a mountain bike race.
The sensei of sprint, Todd Shesky.
My eyes are coming out of my head. Just get in here.
Welcome back to Pack Chatter. I'm your host, Tony, and with me, as always, is my man, Todd Shesky. What's up, buddy?
Well, I think we're looking at the short end of winter, and spring's around the corner. So and we actually had a little taste this week, so it was nice. Been able to get out and had a nice 60-degree day, which was I didn't get to enjoy all of it, but enjoyed some of it. So it's light at the end of the tunnel, man.
Yeah. It's only February. We're getting way more. I'm not that optimistic yet.
well, when the sun doesn't set till 5:30, it just starts to alter my mood at least. So I'm looking forward to it, man. And it's and here we are. We're first week in February, and spring races start in a month. So we have the Giros coming up here in Rochester. So yeah, things and we got the last O Cup is in at the track this weekend. So yeah, so everything's firing, man, and I expect the racing to be super hot. And I know one thing, it's still going to be 80 degrees in the track. So or last time was 84 in there. So that'll definitely be warm no matter what it's doing outside.
Yeah, well,
So,
that's always nice. All right, so with us today is legendary racer coach Bill Elliston. How you doing, Bill?
Good. Glad to be here, man.
Thanks for joining us, man. How's the weather where you are? Are you still in even this cold crap too?
Yeah, I am in this cold crap too. I am down in Pennsylvania. I'm about 25 minutes from the velodrome in Trexlertown, so probably not quite as cold as it is up Rochester way, but it's been plenty cold. Today was
right?
Today was I don't know, low 40s or some crap like that. But yeah, it's all right. It's winter, right?
Right.
yeah, so a little 40s down that way, but and obviously looking forward to spring as well. And let's get a kind of little history. There's been some. I think you got some pretty decent, pretty nice press in the last year or so. Just kind of your story and just kind of fill people in a little bit. What's been your stories of bike race? How did you get started in bike racing? And I know you're a veteran of at least as many years, and probably maybe even a year or two longer than me. I'm in year 33. So what year are you in right now, Bill, for racing?
So I just last week I renewed my license again for another year, and this is year 35.
There you go.
License.
So
yeah, crazy, man. Crazy time flies.
I know. And so how did you get started in bike racing, and kind of what was your path there to where you are now with Elliston coaching and what you're doing now?
So when I was younger, I don't know, I was probably, I guess, 12 years old or so. I had a paper route in our neighborhood growing up, and it was a pretty widespread paper route, big neighborhood, a lot of papers on my route. So I was a little too lazy to walk it. So I convinced my parents to buy me a bike. And it was just, whatever, your average 12-speed bike, got a couple newspaper baskets on it and that sort of stuff. And was riding that paper route every day for, I don't know, maybe a year and a half. And just from being able to ride around the neighborhood, that, I'd walked around and run around all growing up with all my friends, and just, but riding around it got me to see a little bit more of it, and kind of got me connected with a couple of bike racers that actually lived in the neighborhood. One of my mom's good friends who lived just down the street, her son, who was, I don't know, maybe 10 years older than me at the time, was a pretty good regional level bike racer. So I kind of linked up with him, and he showed me the ropes of kind of going out on some longer rides. And then some other guys in the neighborhood, some brothers that lived right around the corner, who those guys are still to this day my best friends. The one guy was best man at my wedding, and I still see him pretty frequently. I actually spent some time with him just earlier this week. So started doing a little bit more riding with those guys, and they kind of quickly turned me on to the idea of racing, like taking out a license, going to some early season races with those guys. And the first race I did was this little training race up on a test track for automobiles up in Berwick, PA, and that was the first time I tried racing, and man, I'll tell you, I was hooked right from the start. So newspaper route, just kind of rolling around the neighborhood, just really kind of piqued my interest a bit, and just kind of lucked out that lived in an area with a handful. I think there was, I guess, 4 bike racers that lived within like a half mile of me. And so I kind of really lucked out to have that guidance growing up and getting started.
Yeah. So what was the time frame like? So when you were like, you started kind of riding around, you hooked up with those guys, and you got into your first race. And how did that first race go for you?
I was riding for probably like 6 months with these guys. Started over maybe the late summer and through the fall, and we were doing a lot of 2 and 3 hour rides and that kind of thing. And So those guys were both much more experienced than me. The one brother was maybe Jeff. He was like 4 years older than me. And then Dave was, I think, 2 years older than me. But they had been racing a few years, so they were a little bit experienced and had some decent results to their name. So because I was training with those guys a lot and keeping up with them relatively well, I kind of got a little bit cocky going into the first race. And it was like an A and a B thing. So it was just a spring training race kind of thing. So the B race was 15 miles and the A race was 30 miles. And I was like, man, I'm doing the A race. Like, I'm not doing that B race stuff. Like, like I'm 15 years old. I'm good. I've been training with these guys. So I did the A race and it was 30 laps. And I think, man, if I lasted 12 laps, I was probably lucky. I remember getting shelled and going back to the car and like throwing my helmet and swearing and being all bent out of shape. But in the same breath, I was just like, I'm doing this again. This is like the best thing ever. So the first race didn't really go so good. Whatever.
Yeah, and it's funny, because you work with a number of juniors too, and you see young guys come into it, and I try to, when guys haven't raced at all before, and usually they're always worried about what their average speed is going to be. I'm like, well, it's not going to be the average speed; it's going to kill you anyways. And trying to get them just prepared for the fact that it's going to be the hardest thing they've ever done, and they're probably going to get dropped. And it's like, it seems like it's so many people's story to like you go out in their first race and you think, oh yeah, well, I'm training with these guys and it's going to be cool. It's going to be fun. We're going kind of fast. And then you find out like, wow, I'm completely not prepared for how hard it was, how fun it was, but also how hard it was. Right. So, and I think it's one of those.
Yeah. And I'll tell you, man, sorry, go ahead there.
Yeah. No, I was just gonna say, it's just like just trying to get people prepared. It's just hard. It's nothing you can really say to anybody until they do it, right?
Well, that's kind of the test, isn't it?
Well,
like the person that's willing to take that kind of punishment and then go, okay, I'm gonna figure this out.
Yeah, it's like either you've got great perseverance or you're dumb as a box of rocks. It's one or the other.
Right.
That you want to keep going back and doing that and hurting yourself. But I think it's such a great story it's a great experience for first time racers to have. Like, you read so many things about, like the Taylor Finneys of the world, like the first race they do, and like, oh yeah, I won by like 3 minutes, and so you kind of wonder if they really get the whole experience of how difficult it is. And I think it's a lot better to figure out how hard it is from the start than to kind of get the wool pulled over your eyes for a while before you figure it out. So I think it's a great way for the young kids to learn, and I think it's kind of universal for most kids. Like 98% of us, that's kind of how we figure it out, and then you keep coming back. Oh, it's good,
Yeah, and I think it's an important aspect too, and one that I always appreciate too. And I look down at what I was able to do, which wasn't going even as far as you did, and you developed into having a pro career. And so you can look at it and say, you came out to this club race, which is just your local thing, and you get shellacked, and you're like, wow, that was really hard. And, when we look at talent ID and all these things and, trying to see what kids are going to do when they're 14, 15, 16 years old. And it's hard because take a guy like yourself, like, okay, you came out there and you took a beating, but you got better. And I think that's such a good story for people to know, like, you're going to get better. And you might get better to the point that you're really good. You kind of puts that.
It's really just be willing to jump back in, and it's always sad to me nowadays. You see a lot of kids that jump into a race and they have a bad experience and they're like, all right, I'm just going to move on to the next thing because I didn't win or I didn't do really well. A lot of kids, and I mean, God, a lot of adults too, just don't have that patience to really kind of learn and figure things out. And it's kind of a bummer because I'm sure we see so many good bike riders, potential bike riders, kind of slip through the cracks because they can't get through that initial learning curve.
Do you see? I work with kids every day, so I think not necessarily in cycling, but I'd love to hear you guys kind of compare your experience over the last, several years working with kids. Have you seen a shift in that with kids over time? Like, are you seeing kids that are sort of less committed to sort of persevering through those kind of things, or is it kind of the way it always is, and just as you get older it seems like the kids are less committed to it?
I mean, I'll jump in and
I
say, yeah. I mean, it's like I don't really see much of a shift because I think, but the kids that I'm coming across, at least, they're already really committed. In fact, I see them, like most of the kids have a really great work ethic. That's what I see. How about you, Bill? And what do you see with that?
I mean, I definitely see some with a really good work ethic, but I definitely see a lot of the need for quick success and the need for quick results to justify kids kind of continuing to plug away in the sport. And I think it's unfortunate, but I think, and I'm not sure what caused that shift, but there's so few guys left like us that persevered for a long time and kept racing, and you don't really see a lot of that happening. Like, you see these younger generation coming through, and you're going to be lucky if many of them are still riding a bike when they get to be our age. So I think definitely my interpretation is that there's a lot of kids that maybe their attention span just isn't quite there. Like, they're really committed, but while they're in it, but if they don't see the results pretty quickly, they're ready to move on to the next thing.
Do you think that has to do with just the amount of options that they have, that, everything's thrown at them, or just the fact that they haven't been taught that skill of persevering, of working through things? Because I think in general, just when I see kids, not necessarily in racing, but specifically just across the board, I think that working through things and sort of accepting that it's supposed to be hard and that's the point is a very sort of foreign idea. I end up teaching that idea a lot, I think, and maybe more so than what I feel like I had to before.
Yeah, I definitely think that ability to really work and figure things out is a little bit of a lost art. Not completely, but I think in this day and age, you've got the internet, you've got Google, and kids, adults, everybody can find anything and everything they want. They can find the answers to so much stuff so quickly on the internet that's become their mindset, that they're used to figuring things out and getting an answer really, really quickly. So I don't think they've kind of really figured out that, well, man, I don't have all the answers. I'm going to have to keep plugging away to figure this out. I don't think a lot of people really know how to do that anymore, unfortunately. And I think that's bike racing for sure. And I think it's across the board in life. I mean, that's been one of my gripes for years. It's just, I think the internet has changed a lot of things in that regard. Obviously, a lot of things for good, but I think in terms of what we're talking about with work ethic and the ability to persevere and kind of suffer through stuff, I think kids don't need to in a lot of different aspects of life. That's not to say they don't need to in everything, but I think the learning curve in a lot of things has really been cut down by the ability to access information and that kind of thing. And I really think that's affected guys' longevity on the bike, is like, well, I can't figure this out really quickly. I'm going to move to something I can figure out.
Yeah, and I think you hit on it there. Go ahead.
I was going to say, maybe a really kind of a downside of that is that we lose good bike racers before they realize they're good bike racers, right? I mean, it's like, it's like kind of the old rule of thumb of 3 to 5 years to become a good bike racer, right? And so that's kind of even just to kind of figure out if you're going to be good is 3 to 5 years. And you see so many people quit around 3 or 4 years in. And they're just starting to scratch the surface of learning what they need to do, and how many people that were like potentially pretty good bike racers just didn't, because they didn't think they were good because they weren't good in year number 2 or 3, right?
Well, and not only just being good, but Bill kind of touched on it there too, and I know just reading a little bit about you and some of the things that I've seen in terms of a racer is the idea of enjoying, I don't know if enjoying is the right word, you can tell me if it's the right word, but being willing to suffer and sort of accepting that and getting into that suffering mode and not trying to escape that, like not trying to constantly find comfort. Like, I think we're sort of programmed in general to sort of consistently seek comfort, to where the idea of suffering is such a turnoff that they don't even want to explore that anymore. And where you guys are working with higher level kids who kind of maybe have worked through some of that already, certainly kids, as far as getting them started or even having a conversation about whether this is something to get into, or anything else for that matter that involves that suffering, is a really a big kind of a turnoff for them. And one of the things that I would hope that bike racing kind of shows them is like, hey, that could be a really positive experience. But can you talk a little bit about that concept of suffering and what you kind of get out of that, and why for so many years, year after year after year, you're willing to keep doing that?
Yeah, I mean, I think honestly, to be a successful bike racer, and I think to be a successful athlete in general, you have to have, for lack of a better term, kind of a perverse addiction or affliction for suffering. You have to really find some kind of bizarre enjoyment out of it, because that's what bike racing is. It's basically a pain tolerance contest, and it's who can suffer the most at the end of the day. So you have to be able to embrace that somehow. And to me, it's, I've always kind of enjoyed that, and I've always kind of enjoyed the end result of that is kind of seeing how far, like on a given day, how far you can push yourself, or to how deep you can dig, and how hard you can go, or how fast you can go, or whatever the case is. I've always really enjoyed that aspect of it. And it's honestly, like, I mean, sure, it's waned a little bit, 35 years. Of course, it's going to wane a little bit, but I still get a pretty good enjoyment out of it, and satisfaction of, on a given day, being like, all right, how hard can I go, and how much work can I do on this day, and how many miles can I cover, or whatever. And I think you really have to be embrace being uncomfortable a lot of the time, because I mean, in a bike race, most of the time, if you're comfortable, you're probably not going hard enough, and you're probably not going to do real well if you're in a comfort zone. So you have to really enjoy stepping out of that comfort zone a lot. And I think it's just, I don't know what creates that quality, with people. I have no idea what creates it with me, but I enjoy it. And it's one of those things that just continues to kind of fuel me a little bit. And I think it's a rare thing. I think it's hard to come across that person that has that. And then on top of that, they have to have some kind of natural predisposition to whatever sport they're doing, and some physiological talent, and so on. So it's the ability to suffer and push yourself is certainly a large component of it, but it's one of a couple components that have to mesh together to create a good athlete. And it's I mean, you look at how many athletes are at the top of a given sport, and there's not a lot. So you kind of realize that for people to have all those qualities, including that ability to suffer, is kind of a select few that have it.
Is that something you can coach? I mean, is that something you talk to athletes about, or is that something that just kind of is there or not there?
I mean, I think you can coach it a little bit. When you've got an athlete that maybe you can see has some of that ability to tap into those deep, dark places of going really hard and pushing themselves, sometimes you can coax a little bit more out of them. But if you've got an athlete that comes to you that just clearly doesn't have that ability to really go that far inside themselves, I don't think that's something. You might be able to coach them a little bit to kind of dive into that cave, but I don't think you can coach them to the point that they're going to be super successful and be able to go so far into themselves for what they need to do.
Yeah, I think that's it's an inner drive kind of thing, and as would be anything that draws somebody to really get to that level. It's not just I'm just riding and I like riding, but to I always call it groveling, right? It's kind of that who's really willing to grovel. I mean, when it's just, we've all done those races, and God, and if you race in South America, you definitely do it. And, but even some of the ones that we did in Canada, I mean, all over, like you've done Tour de Beauce or any of these races. And then the roads are, you're getting sprayed with junk, and, you're loaded with dirt and sand and grit, and you can't see, and then you're cold and it's raining, and, and it's who's going to just grovel in that and just be like, I'm going to persevere, and I'm going to press hard, and I'm adding pain to the misery that's already just around me from being in the elements. And I think that's when you just kind of find out what's in you. And I think that's, I kind of relate to a lot of that as you do, Bill. And it's just that kind of, I don't know, there's training rides that are fun like that. And I think it's the sense of disciplining yourself. It's putting yourself in that place and knowing that you could give up on yourself and stop and just go out the back in the race, or just not do the numbers when you're training, or whatever it is. But it's putting yourself in that place, and then when you get done, it's a gratification of the discipline and the results that come from that. Like, well, I'm stronger than I was, and I'm better than I was, and I was able to discipline myself and go out in that day that I didn't really feel like doing that. And I think it just translates into so many things, and of just accomplishing something that was it was difficult, and you did it anyway, and but getting people to be in that place. Not everybody wants to be in that place of, they don't want to be in a place of pain and discomfort, and but it does pay those rewards, and when you can win or do something along those lines, and then it's cool.
Yeah, and it really teaches. I mean, for the sport in general, no matter what level you're kind of racing at it definitely teaches that if you're willing to do it. And it carries over in a lot of different areas. And that's, again, where we talk about with kids and having conversations with kids who sort of in school, they're not really, well, this isn't entertaining me, so I don't really want to do it kind of a thing. And, being able to be in those experiences in sport, I think translate really well. But as we see that kind of being less and less, I think I see it not just with cycling, but seeing it with other areas where kids just sort of don't feel that they have the ability to push into these other areas in life in general.
Right. And it's just a hard thing to get people to just kind of see that, and and then to persevere in it long enough to realize their potential and whatever that's going to be. Right. So
let's get into some stuff that you're into, that you got going on now, Bill. What's on the docket for you right now?
Well, so coaching is kind of my main thing. It's been kind of my main thing since I stopped racing professionally back in 2008. So kind of got that thing going on, doing a lot of one-on-one coaching with athletes. And over the years, I've been building up, doing some camps, doing a lot of clinics, that kind of thing. Some work with USA Cycling in the past, obviously some with Todd, and I'm kind of back in the mix a little bit now, helping with some of their new ODP, Olympic Development programs on the track. But right now for the short term, we've got a camp lined up coming up here pretty soon. I've got a couple of beginning racer clinics coming up in March. I've got a few announcing gigs on tap for this year. I've been kind of getting back into doing a little bit of announcing. It's some local crits and some UCI cross races in the region down here. So just kind of juggling a lot of balls, all things bike racing related, between coaching, some camps, and doing some announcing. It's try and keep it a little bit diverse. I really enjoy doing the camps, so trying to really lean a little bit more in that direction, put some more of those together, some training camps, and a lot of during the cross season I do a lot of clinics and that kind of thing. I get a lot of enjoyment out of that. It's good stuff.
Yeah, I saw one coming up that you got this summer up in our area, right?
Yeah, so Leslie Schenk, Trzynski, obviously, Todd knows. He kind of connected me with Leslie a few years ago doing the Talent ID camps up there in the Finger Lakes. And so Leslie runs a pretty successful yoga enterprise up out of Rochester, and she's looking to put together, I think it's about a 3.5-day camp for beginner racers and beginner cyclists up in the Finger Lakes region, up in Canandaigua Lakes and that kind of area. So looking forward quite a bit to helping her out. We spent a bit of time on the phone, I don't know, maybe 2 weeks ago, kind of hashing out a good itinerary and kind of how we wanted to approach it. And so I'm pretty excited to do that with her, because she seems to put together some really good camps and really good programs up in that area. So that should be fun. That's going to be middle toward the latter half of June up there.
That sounds cool. So what's the mix? Kind of some riding, some yoga, sort of a mix of activities there?
Yeah, some riding, some yoga, some discussions in the evening. And we're going to spend one of the mornings, I think the opening morning on Friday, doing a fair bit of skills. One of the things that I like to do, and I kind of did a lot with the USA Cycling camps, used to work a little bit more frequently, is really teaching a lot of skills and handling, because I think my impression is that everybody can get to be a stronger cyclist to whatever level they desire in some way by simply some organized rides and some training and so on. But I think one of the things a lot of people really forego is kind of working on their skills. So you end up with people that get actually pretty strong and pretty capable on the bike, but their skill set in terms of riding in a group or even just handling themselves out there on the road by themselves is poor at best and dangerous, honestly, sometimes. So I'm a really big fan of teaching people some skills to make them safer bike riders. I think at the end of the day, if they're a little bit safer out there on the roads, they're going to get a lot more enjoyment out of what they're doing as they get faster.
For sure. What are some of the specifics that you see in there that you're focusing on when you're teaching those skills that people could kind of be aware of?
One of the big ones is really getting comfortable both riding side by side with people. I mean, back in, Todd knows, back in the day, like our training rides would be 2x2, kind of a double pace line, and you would literally ride handlebar to handlebar with people as you shared the pace on the front of the group. And nowadays, people, man, it's really rare to see people be able to do that, to be able to keep an even pace, or to be able to literally ride bar to bar, shoulder to shoulder, without swerving, slamming into each other, being nervous. And when they do make a little bit of contact, as sometimes happens, there's a lot of overreaction that causes panic and fear and causes more crashes than not. So I like to really try and teach people how to be a little bit more relaxed, riding next to people, and then also just riding in a pretty dynamic group with people all around you. And really, it's so much of it just comes down to where your eyes go and kind of your upper body language and paying attention.
And that's one of those.
Again, it's just.
Yeah, I was just saying that one of the skills too, and you talk about that, Bill, is like, we used to do more cycling as a rule. The group rides were more prevalent, and with all the, like we've talked about in a couple of recent shows, with esports and things, and people getting on Zwift and Trainer Road and all these things, you get people that are fairly fit and fairly strong, but they've been sitting on a trainer and not getting skills or not with other people, and then they get into a group atmosphere and they're tentative, and then they in some ways become self-fulfilling prophecies because they're nervous about it, and then because they're nervous about it, then they make contact, they overreact, and you have all these issues, and they don't kind of get worked out with the group ride, with riding in close proximity to people, outside of the social aspect that they're losing as well. But you just wind up developing strong riders without strong skills, which is kind of a really bad combination, like having a really fast car and not knowing how to drive.
Right.
Yeah, and that's exactly the analogy, right? It's like throwing a 16-year-old into a Ferrari and trying to teach him how to drive, and man, it's going to go poorly 9 times out of 10. Yeah,
and I one of the things, like when we always did the junior camp that you were lead coach for me on, and just even our group rides and just getting people to be steady. And I remember we were doing the one group ride. Remember when we were with Gordon Singleton was with us, and we had to finally just get everybody in like the little chain ring because people just couldn't stop
Right.
surging. We finally Gordon had us pull everybody over the side of the road. He was great. And he's just like, we gotta yeah, some guys in a big chain ring. Of course, every time they step on the pedal, they're shooting forward. It's like got everybody in the little small chain ring, get everybody spinning, and we got some continuity and some flow then to that group. And it's just stuff that people don't learn when they're riding on their own and how to make that group steady. And it may seem like kind of a trivial skill, but it's not. For one, if you want to have a nice group ride, and two, if you're in a breakaway, how to stay smooth.
Right.
So,
It's always comical to me how you get some of these guys that just totally diss those skills and think they're not important, and then you kind of make them realize that, like, you can actually win a lot of races or do better in a lot of races by having a pretty good command of some of these skills, because it's being smooth, being efficient, and being steady are really great keys to being a good bike racer. It's not all about, it's rarely the strongest guy wins or the fastest guy wins, and I rarely see bike races where that's the outcome.
Yeah, and I think, and it's kind of the underrated skills of just good, smooth bike, not overreacting. Outside of the fact that you don't end up on the ground, which
Yeah,
which has
which has advantages, right?
yeah.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
funny when you talk about the
absolutely.
stronger the stronger guys with those skill, that combination. I always joke that the Cat 3s are the crashiest racers. People want to say that, I got to get away from, Cat 4s are always like, I got to go away from the Cat 5s, they're going to crash everybody. I was like, no, the Cat 3s are the ones where always the worst crashes are, because they got the best combination of strength and lack of handling and inexperience, to where in the races I've seen, that's always where the worst crashes are, seem to come out of that group in particular. I think it's that combo.
Yeah, no, it's also funny
Yeah.
when you say that too. Is you wind up seeing, seems my experience is that the guys that complain the worst about the group they're in, that nobody knows how to ride, are usually the worst offenders.
Yeah, that too, right? They're the ones yelling the most, and it's like, stop yelling at everybody and just ride your bike, and things will go better for you.
Right. Just pay attention and be smooth, and you'll be fine. Like I don't know about you, but I do almost no group rides anymore. Once in a while, I'll head up to T-Town and do the Derby, that ride up there, but I'll do that literally 5-6 times a year. And outside of that, like, I either ride by myself or literally with like 2 or 3 other guys, and that's it. I can't deal with these group rides. I've kind of blown my head trying to teach people stuff, and they want nothing to do with it. They just want to go as hard as they can go and chase freaking Strava segments and stuff,
Yeah, it's part of that. I don't know, and it's part of the technology thing, and everybody's been kind of jumping on this thing, and I run a skills clinic up here, and I'll be doing it again this year and it's always amazing that there's always at least a couple of people that will say something afterwards about they didn't even kind of realize how poor their skills were, or how much they were deficient in things, and how much they learned from some simple things, but being able to explain those and practice those in a controlled environment. And it's like their enjoyment factor of being in the group, and outside of just the racing part of it, just being in a group and having that comfort level, it's like, something to try to keep pushing forward. And I think it's difficult because we are kind of dealing with those other things, but it's, I think it compounds people's enjoyment outside of being able to win races. And there's so much of it, as much as a big power, training by power advocate that I am, I always still try to really temper that with good skills and good tactics. And good skills, man, saving yourself. I mean, you think about all you're going to do in a crit. I mean, think about, you've raced Rochester's crit a number of times, Bill.
Oh yeah.
And think about when your skills are bad and you go through the hairpin, and all of a sudden you just drop a second because you couldn't stay on a wheel. And,
yeah, absolutely. There's so many corners you could lose. If you can't corner up there, you could lose 5, 6, 7 seconds a lap just like that, and constantly be in chase mode.
Yeah, and how many? And I always tell people, how many times are you going to sprint? You think, well, I'll just make it up,
Right,
but you
exactly.
can't. You can't keep sprinting. So, you
No.
take a course like that or something similar, like, Tony's had his airport race last year, very similar, where it's like, man, your ability to take smooth lines and not have to expend extra energy, it all aggregates at the end of the race. And how many times are you
Yep.
going to be able to do that? So, I don't think we can emphasize that enough, and it's maybe something more from our generation where it was more kind of passed down, and we have to kind of do these more concerted efforts now. Of
Yeah,
clubs
no,
and things.
absolutely. It's that whole club structure that we grew up with that taught us these skills and had these rides every week where you learned how to pace line and you learned how to sit a wheel, and those clubs just don't exist anymore in a lot of areas, and it's kind of unfortunate.
Yeah, yeah, or it becomes chasing straws. I always tell people on a group ride, if people ride off the front, I'm like, just don't chase them. Like just stay where you are. Let's just do what we're doing. And if we turn and they're not with us, well, they weren't with us anyway, so it's okay. But
Pretty much. Yeah.
Yeah, I always tell people when we do ours, man, the point of a group ride is to ride in the group. So if you want to attack off the front, like, I don't know, go do it, go ride on your own on your time trial bike or something.
yeah, it's just not worth it.
Yeah, well, that's it, man. It's supposed to be a social affair. You're supposed to have a good time and chat and catch up and enjoy the day together, not be out there everybody doing their damn intervals and stuff.
Yep. So you also do some. You've had some involvement in Belize. You raced there years ago, and did you? What I forget now exactly. Was it the mountain climbers jersey that you got there in the Tour Belize?
Yeah, you remember it because the irony is not lost on you that I won a mountain jersey.
Well, not as
Yeah,
I.
so
It
that was
wouldn't be as
man,
bad
that
as if
was
I won one.
oh man, I'm like the least likely person to win that, but whatever. It yeah, that was not the first time I raced in Belize. I think that was like the second or third time I went back. They had a really good stage race down there for a couple of years, the Tour of Belize. And I think that year I won the climbers jersey was 2006. Yeah, and I won. It was a 9 day. It was like 9 days, 11 stages, and I won the first climbs were maybe on the third day, and I won the jersey the first day and held on to it from start to finish. And to be fair, there was really only probably two of the stages that were legitimate climbing. They were really pretty hard climbs. The rest of it was really kind of mellow climbs, like 2 and 3 minute stuff. That's right up my alley. Like
Yeah.
nobody's going to drop me on a 2 or 3 minute climb, really. Um, so it was nice. It was nice to win that jersey, and that's something I'm kind of proud of because I've never won a jersey out of a stage race before, and there was a lot of good teams down there, and so it was good. No, that was fun. Belize is an awesome place. Awesome place.
Yeah, and you have a camp you're doing there this year as well, right?
Yeah, yeah. So a couple years, for a few years, I was running some private training camps for a women's team based out of Chicago, and one of the years we went down there, held the camp down in the western end of Belize, and that was great. Everyone had a good time. We had some great training, and it kind of got the ball rolling in my head a little bit of maybe expanding on that a little bit. So yeah, so I put together a camp for this year. It's a training camp / a little bit of adventure camp. A couple days of doing a little bit of sightseeing, going to some Mayan ruins, going to check out some stuff in the jungles down there, and that kind of thing, and getting some good rides in. So yeah, that's coming up in mid-March. I'm looking forward to that. It'll be 7 days with 5 really good rides, and then 2 days of some optional rides, but really just kind of playing tourists because you're in a Central American / Caribbean country, and it's kind of nice to take in some of the tourist sites a little bit.
Yeah, definitely. And but you've done some stuff with the juniors and some of the club teams and stuff there as well in the past. And are you still doing some of those activities with helping them out and bringing things to them and different things?
Yeah, so I've done a bunch of different stuff down there. One of the kind of the coolest things was I think maybe back in 2012. a buddy of mine, Ray Ignash, who we had been running a junior program together that had kind of, I think maybe had disbanded at that point. But at that time, I don't think I had my USAC coach's license yet, so I wasn't like privy to some of the emails and the information that went out. But Ray was, and he had seen a notice on one of the boards that the Belize Cycling Federation had petitioned, by way of the U.S. Embassy, had petitioned for some USAC coaches to come down there and put on some seminars to teach them some training, teach them some organizational stuff for their federation. And so Ray had replied to that, and he was the only one who replied to it, and they were like, cool, you're coming, you're going down. And he told me about it, and I was like, dude, you got to call, like email them and see if they'd be willing to bring another coach down and just like drop my name, tell them who it is, because I had already been there, probably five times at that point. I'd won one of their big races down there, and I'd won that climber's jersey and so on. So Ray reached out to them and said, hey, I've got another coach up here who would like to come down. You might know who he is, and dropped my name. And they were like, yeah. So I got in on that trip too. So it was basically a U.S. State Department gig where Ray and I went down there and for a week, 10 days, and did two different seminars, one in Belize City and one out in San Ignacio, out in the western end of the country, and just met up with some coaches down there, met up with a bunch of athletes, gave a lot of talks on proper training techniques, nutrition, recovery. We met a couple times with some of the staff of the federation to try and give them some ideas on how to really grow the sport a little bit down there, and in terms of participation and in terms of races and that sort of thing. And that was a really cool little adventure. And since then I've been back there, not by way of the federation, but by way of some different clubs, and some coaches down there have brought me down or helped me get down there to run some clinics down there. So I've done that, I don't know, 2 or 3 additional times. And that's kind of led me into, I've given a lot of advice to some of their athletes, and I actually currently coach 2 of their best athletes, one of the best female athletes down there, and then another one of their very promising elite men, who I've been coaching for a little while. So coaching those 2 riders, I've been taking and shipping a lot of used goods, like cycling kits and clothing and parts and wheels and so on. I've been shipping a lot of stuff down there over the last year and a half. I've probably shipped 10 big bike boxes worth of clothing and equipment and frames and wheels and stuff down there to help give them some stuff for their kids that are starting out. Like the one girl I coach runs a high school league and a youth league in Belize City. So every year they've got like 150 kids in the high school league and another 150 kids in the youth league. That's like from ages 5 to 11, I believe. And they, some of them have some equipment, but it's not really a third world country. They're a little on the emerging side from that, but they don't have a lot of the same means to access equipment that we have, and simple stuff like helmets and clothing and pedals and that kind of stuff. So they've had a real need for some of these kids getting involved in those programs. So I've tried to ship a bunch of stuff down, some of my own stuff, and I've reached out to a lot of people, and a lot of local shops have donated to the cause. A lot of local athletes, riders have donated. So I've been able to send a lot of stuff down there, and I've actually got 2 more boxes in the garage right now that are just about full, but I'll probably shoot them off sometime next week to get them down there.
Right. Yeah, and I think it's just a great effort. I think when we did some racing down in Latin America, we'd stuff extra stuff in our bike boxes and bring them to them, and jerseys we weren't going to use, and all good stuff. It wasn't like, here, let's give these guys rip stuff. Some stuff I even put, like, they were brand new in bags, and sometimes I run some of these teams,
right.
all this extra stuff. Like, what am I gonna do with this? Sponsors are gone, team's over, and I got bags of these jerseys, and man, I was just giving to these kids for these junior teams, and some of that stuff just makes such a huge difference. That we just don't necessarily hear or recognize because stuff is easy accessible, and just being able to bring it with you, and they don't have to try to get it shipped there, and it's kind of
right.
done. So
the beauty of it is like, it's all, like you said, it's all good stuff, and some of it's maybe not top of the line, like some of the parts I've sent down are like Rival or 105 or Tiagra stuff, but the beauty of it is they've obviously got some of their elite class of riders who are on equipment that's every bit as good as some of the stuff that we're on here. But you got a lot of these younger kids that they'll race whatever. They're happy to use whatever they can get their hands on to race, and they're not complaining. They don't need carbon this and carbon that. They're happy to have whatever they have, and as long as it can function, and they're out there racing hard. And some of those kids are every bit as competitive on that stuff as some of the other kids that might have all the carbon goodies. So that's the part I like to see, is that these kids are grateful for 10-year-old steel or aluminum parts that might be a little bit beat up, but they still use them and they can still be successful on them. And that's kind of the part of it I really enjoy.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, it really kind of highlights it. It's just a kind of very fundamental, and it's and it really kind of taps their passion for the sport and for just not being dominated by, well, I don't have the top of the line lightest weight thing, and then when they're successful on it, I think it just really even drives it home. It's like you still got an engine or you don't, and and you either got heart or you don't have heart. And when you see them have heart and passion and they work hard, and it's like, and they can be successful, and they're only going to get better if they dial in the extra lightweight stuff later. So
sure, exactly.
Yeah. But great program down there, and so I wanted to make sure we definitely touched on that. And I know you got that camp coming up down there, and I think it's a great opportunity for people to look at doing. Hopefully I'll get to Belize.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'd love to get down there.
Got to come down, man.
Yeah,
come down and do that race with me, man. 137 miles. It's pretty flat, right up your alley.
Yeah, flat, good. I like anything. Hills under a minute and a half are good for me too. So
yeah. There's a handful of those, and it's perfect.
Yeah, it's exactly. Perfect. I always say that some of those can be even harder races because they're constant punches, right? And when you can be punching like that, it's the stuff. So, yeah, it was great stuff, and I was glad we were able to catch up with you a little bit here. And if people are, hope people will reach out if they're interested in going to Belize or one of those camps. And great opportunities for sure. So
where can they get more info on that?
So they can go to my website, which is just ellistoncoaching.com, and if you click over to the services page, there's a link for the flyer on there. So you can find out all the info about it. It's all pretty detailed and spelled out in there.
All right, very cool. We'll put that in the notes on the podcast. I think I saw something on Facebook for the local camp, so we'll share that through our podcast page as well. So if folks want to jump on that,
awesome. The more the merrier.
All right. Well, thanks a lot, Bill. We appreciate it. It was a great conversation.
Hey, man, I appreciate it. I appreciate you guys reaching out. It's always good to chat.
Yeah, definitely. So, and if you're in the area, look us up. You know my number, and let's grab a beer.
Yeah, man.
I know you're always
I'll be up for the Rochester race as usual, man. No conflict with Wilmington this year. Yeah. So I'm definitely planning to come up there and suffer my way through all around downtown Rochester in the dark again.
Yeah, well, I think I'm gonna take my cue from the last shellacking that I got, and maybe I'm gonna maybe not suit up.
It's all good, man. That you can have the beers all queued up for when we finish. How's that?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll have some nice cold ones ready to rock. We'll sit on the tailgate and we'll have some beers, and it'll be awesome. So
perfect.
Cool, man.
That's my kind of bike race day.
All right. Well, let's stay warm in the meantime and keep in touch.
Sounds good, man. Appreciate it.
Thanks a lot, man.
You got it.